So hello, this time I got a question more than I got an answer for you guys. I got kind of an issue that I kind of running into lately with 3D designing and printing and all. And I'm kind of curious if somebody out there kind of do know some people who've done some tests about this, or maybe have some recommendations of 3D printing materials to use, or some also some testing data again, something like that. Because I've been 3D printing for quite some time now, and what I notice is when I first print something, it seems to be strong and fine, but over time parts seem to be getting weaker and weaker. And it does kind of remind me of the fact when you have like an old roll of filament from, let's say, PLA, and you let it lay, you don't use it for a long time, that filament gets really brittle to the point that you cannot print it anymore, because when you put it in a 3D printer, it will just snap in pieces. And I kind of have the feeling, even if you use PLA Plus or patchy, I've used it also in the past, that kind of happens the same way when it's 3D printed. Of course, I do know like a part like a selector, a Mac release. There's a spring underneath there, and when it's hot weather, of course, this is prone to warp because it's continuously pressing against the spring, and then of course the spring will just warp this part. Also heard about like the fire pins kind of walking out because of the continuously pressure that it has. Um, and those are kind of things I kind of am concerned about. That I kind of want to have something that's maybe better, certainly better than I use currently. Um, Again, I've used PETG in the past, and that seems to work in the beginning fine, but that is getting really brittle, like glass later on. So that's why I kind of moved back then to Asian PLA Plus. But even also with that one, I have the paintball edition of the FGC 9, and then the Mac release broke. Just let's say I just picked it up from the gun rack, and then I saw that it was broken, just for doing nothing basically, just having that spring pressure continuously pressing against it. Um, so then I was looking like, okay, maybe I should use the nylon with carbon fiber in it, but then I hear Wolfman talking about, yeah, when it gets moist inside of there, it's getting less impact resistance, and got also same issues like it's the pins are walking out, things like that. So then I think, okay, that's not an option. Then I hear, okay, PLA Plus is better from, let's say, Polymaker, but I don't really see people having some long-term testing videos at all. I'm kind of wondering if that is even done, and if that is just kind of something people don't talk about because it's just not good, and people don't really want to talk about it. That is an issue, but it is an issue that I noticed. Now I got some prints laying around for quite some time now. Let's give this as an example. When you have bolts right here that bolts this, when you have this part that is bolted, that bolts to this part, then there is pressure on the front part that gives tension. And I've noticed not necessarily in this because it's quite a big part, but with some other things, then it will crack over time because there's pressure of the bolts pressing against, giving tension to other layers. And so there are many things that are kind of like, okay, yeah, and first it works, but over time it doesn't. And it really gives me no really good feeling about really continually working on this type of things, especially some projects. Uh, like the airsoft models are fine in a sense because they are quite low spring pressures, especially in the fire control group. So that's a nice thing. There's less stress on the parts. But even for that, if you would consider that you go with that to an airsoft event, and then let's say the first half year or year it works fine, then the second year you need to replace a lot of parts because you cannot rely on them. Just to give a picture of what I'm talking about, that's a big issue to me. And if we are talking just for a competition game like paintball or airsoft, that is maybe acceptable. I don't think it is. If it is like that, it should be, of course, plastic degrades. That's a fact. But how fast is well kind of an irrelevant factor. And of course, I get when picture people just print out non-functional parts, just statues or something like that. It's not that relevant that it becomes more brittle if you touch it. But for items you use and mechanical items, things that are under spring tension, it does. Um, yeah, that's kind of the thing I'm lately kind of, and that's for a while I'm kind of struggling with that idea because I do like to 3D print and design things and things like that, but it's kind of hard for me to also invest in a new printer if I should I go for a printer that can print carbon carbon fiber nylon, even if that is an expensive material also for me to kind of print with. And if that doesn't really solve the issue I'm kind of looking for, or is it maybe a little bit overblown that I think like that it's not really solving it? Um, that's kind of my thinking. So if somebody out there kind of have seen some, maybe even if it's not on video format, just some text and blog post, something like that, that kind of some more information about that would be really helpful because it's kind of I of course will do some research myself, seeing what other people are thinking, but I find it at least something like on YouTube really hard to find really somebody talking about it because I do know of course about CNC Kitchen and his testing, but I don't think he ever done it, let's say 2 years later, the same print that is printed and laying around for 3 years, even if it is just indoors, because the prints that are failing on me are not even outside that much. They are only sometimes bring to a paintball event, then they are back home, and okay, maybe the car was hot, and then maybe the nights are cold because it's a multiple day event, and then it's back home in his room again. It's not seeing that much action, to be honest. It's just a few days in a year, and that's it. And it's already kind of failing. And even parts that I just printed to test fit and just put in the box, and later I pick it up and it's like, oh, it snaps. So at first I was really blaming my printing settings, and at, in some prints they do have a little bit under extrusion, so okay, that's an issue. But even when you fix that later on, still not really convinced me that is really a solution. So that's what I kind of wonder is like, is the eSun PLA Plus, let's say, garbage in that regard? not good, so maybe only good for prototyping, but not really if you want to have a part long term? Or is this just something that is going on with 3D printed materials and when you 3D print things? So yeah, again, I'm really curious about it. If you guys have some information about that, that would be really helpful. Please leave them in the comments, and yeah, see you guys next time.